Here's the pattern I see with ADHD entrepreneurs in January, right? You set those goals, you're committed, you're going to do this, and then March hits and you discover something totally new. And you get bored with the original plan. You pivot, you hyper focus on something completely different, and you feel like you failed. But what if the pivot is actually the plan?
Yo, yo, yes.
Yo, yo, it's Alyece, say it right, no cap. ADHD CEO, yeah, we run this track. Systems that slap, brains built different. We make sales in our sleep, yeah, the hustle's efficient. This ain't fluff, nah, this is strategy raw for the ADHD. Minds breaking every old law. Hit subscribe, don't miss a single show. We're running on dopamine, let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
What if flexibility is the entire strategy? For ADHD brains, traditional goal setting is set up for failure because it assumes you can change your mind. It assumes January knowledge is better than March knowledge. And that's totally wrong. And so, some things that I see is entrepreneurs saying, like, I have to know what I want for the whole year. No, you don't. Okay. You have to know what direction you're going, what you're working towards. But the specific path that gets figured out as you go. And this is actually more responsible than rigidly following a plan that no longer works. There is nothing worse than sticking to a plan and in your gut knowing that it's not what you're supposed to be doing. And so that's the entire reason I launched the growth game plan sessions a while back was you set your direction, your 3-month iterations, and you're allowed to adjust each quarter based on real information. And that's not wishy-washy, that's smart. And instead of goal setting, do direction setting. Like, what direction do you want your business to move in 2026? Revenue, audience, product expansion, impact. It might be all of those things, but if you know the direction, the implementation kind of happens as you go. And I also see a lot of ADHDpreneurs saying, like, if I'm not disciplined about my goals, I'm going to fail. And it's actually the opposite. If you're so rigidly attached to your goals that you can't adjust when things change or when really big opportunities show up, you're going to fail. Okay, your market will shift, your customers will change, your energy is going to move. And discipline isn't about not pivoting. It's about being disciplined about the direction, even when you're flexible about the path. And so I want you to think about listing out the goals from last year that you accomplished and notice which ones you were flexible about and adjusted because those are your successes. Your hyper focus isn't a problem, okay? It's not a problem. And this is another thing that I see often that wrecks so many neurodivergent entrepreneurs is they hyper focus on something, they abandon their plan, and then they feel guilty. But hyper focus is legitimately your superpower. It is your brain saying, this is important, this matters, let's go deep. And so instead of fighting it, you have to make a plan to work with it. You have to plan your year so your hyper focus is expected and integrated. And you should know that based on your history. And the focused and free membership, that's what I teach specifically. Build your hyper focus into your projects. You don't want to pretend they won't happen. You know it's going to happen. What typically do you get hyper focused on? Is it community? Is it content? Is it product development? Is it client service? Build that into 2026. And so I know a lot of times we think that commitment means never changing your mind, but that's just corporate culture bullshit, honestly. And that's how it works, right? In corporate, you set a goal in quarter one, you execute it through quarter four, no matter what changes. But that's actually a really poor strategy. Good strategy accounts for new information, market shifts, learning. Your ability to change your mind when the evidence suggests you should is a feature. It's not a bug. It's not a problem. And we think, and we've been trained to think that real entrepreneurs have these 5-year plans. And you probably do, and you probably did. But we also know ADHD brains, we change our mind often, right? And so some entrepreneurs benefit from those long-term planning. Some benefit from quarterly planning with annual direction. And that's what I see works better for neurodivergent brains. And so I share a lot about this in my unmasked community because it's full of entrepreneurs who have stopped fighting their actual planning process and embraced it instead. That lie that we tell ourselves that pivoting means we weren't serious or we weren't successful, it just keeps you attached to bad strategies. Every successful company pivots. They learn, they adjust, they respond to that market feedback. And so your 2026 goals should include the pivot possibility from day one. And I remember sitting down to plan 2024. I was determined. Okay, this was 2-3 years ago. This was going to be the year. It was going to be my year. and I was going to stick to the plan. I wasn't going to change anything. I was not going to hyper focus on anything. I was just going to execute. And by March, I was hyper focused on something completely different. And I felt so guilty, like I was failing, like I was off track. But I went on to hit six figures in less than 6 months again for the second time because I realized that the pivot was actually working better than the original plan. The new focus was more aligned with my energy. The market response was better. I wasn't failing, I was learning. And instead of fighting against it, I did something pretty radical. I acknowledged that pivot and I made it official and I built the rest of the year around it. And so the most successful year I had happened when I stopped forcing the plan and started working with those signals, those gut punches that I get. And so if you've never listened to any of my episodes, I love to be super tactical. So I'm going to give you 5 steps to build a pivot friendly, because it's going to happen. You know it. Let's go ahead and acknowledge it. Set your direction. Strategy 1. Okay. Your direction, not your destination. So when you're looking at making your goals for 2026, I want you to think about like, instead of saying, I'm going to make $250,000 in 2026, I want you to think like I'm building, a six-figure revenue sustainably. I want you to think along the lines of what that direction looks like, right? Direction gives you flexibility, destination locks you in. And obviously, we need to have smart goals in order to achieve them, but start with the direction. So instead of I'm going to launch 3 products, I'm going to expand my product range based on what the market wants in this area or this niche. And so I work really closely with my students in the ADHDpreneur Academy teaching this. You set the direction, you measure progress quarterly, and then you adjust it. So I want you to stop and think and write down your 2026 direction in 3 sentences. Okay. Start there, and the goals build from that. Strategy 2 here is I want you to plan for hyperfocus. Okay. Don't fight it. Look at your history. You know it's going to happen. Why are you even trying to pretend like it's not? When do you hyperfocus? What do you typically hyperfocus on? What's the pattern? Build that into 2026. Don't pretend it's not going to happen. Expect it. Make it part of your strategy. I talk a lot about this in my Unmasked community and then, of course, in my programs of how I have structured my work week for my flow for that. It's what my entire TED Talk was about. But if you hyper focus on community, build community projects in quarter 1. Don't pretend you're going to pull off something different. Map where your hyper focus typically shows up in the year. Plan projects that leverage it. Strategy 3 is building in those quarterly checkpoints. So not necessarily annual goals. I do recommend that you have annual goals, but instead of one goal for the entire year, set quarterly intentions every 3 months and review, adjust, move forward. And that's going to give your brain the structure it needs to be flexible. And that's what it requires. It's just that simple. So set your 3-sentence direction for the year and set quarter 1 goals. 3 areas of focus. That's it. Okay. And then in March, look at that and say, okay, where am I going from here? Strategy 4, identify your non-negotiables. And oh my gosh, I cannot tell you enough about this. These are 3 things that must happen in 2026 for you. Not for perfection, but for business survival and growth. Maybe it's a revenue target. Maybe it's customer satisfaction. Maybe it's sustainable hours. Whatever it is, identify that now. Everything else can pivot. But write your 3 non-negotiables for 2026. Everything else can change. And then strategy 5 here, give yourself permission to pivot. Okay, this is the magic one because you're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to follow the hyperfocus. You're allowed to respond to the market signals. Written permission from me, from the Unmasked community, from the ADHDpreneur Academy. You don't have to rigidly execute a plan that's no longer working. If it is not in your gut that it is what you're supposed to be doing, if it doesn't feel good to you, why are you doing it? Write this down somewhere, okay? You'll see it. I have permission to adjust my 2026 plan based on learning, market feedback, and my actual energy. Boom, done. Put a sticky note, put it on your desk. So, implementation tips. Here's how you're actually going to do it. First, start now. Let your ideas percolate. If you're trying to wait till January 1 to get this going, yikes. 2, you need to be in some sort of mentorship and accountability program that actually sees your brain, how you work. So you need to be using Focused and Free membership, or I don't care, you can go find a different mentor, but you need some sort of accountability structure. You got to share your direction. You got to get feedback on it. We're always looking for somebody to validate us, and it's just how we operate. And it's very hard to validate ourselves, especially when our neurodivergent brain starts spiraling. Third, you need to build in a pivot point. Maybe it's March, maybe it's April. Give yourself a moment to review and adjust course if needed. Number 4, track what works. Not perfectly, approximately. So you can learn the patterns. We recognize patterns. We like patterns. That gives you the dopamine that you need and the momentum to keep going. 5, celebrate the pivots. Okay, they're not failures. They're your brain doing exactly what it should be doing. So your 2026 doesn't have to look like everyone else's. Okay, it doesn't have to be rigid. It doesn't have to be planned perfectly. It has to be flexible, responsive, and built for how your brain operates. And when you plan that way, something magical kind of happens. Not to go all Disney on you guys, but I am getting ready to go to Disney. So maybe that's why I said magical. But you stop failing at plans. You start succeeding at life. You pivot when you need to. Your hyperfocus should come into play when it needs to. You build a business that works with your brain instead of against it. That's 2026. That's sustainable ADHD entrepreneurship. So, with that being said, if you got any value out of this episode at all, I like to keep them short and sweet to the point. Drop me a review. It is the absolute best compliment you can give. Take a screenshot of you listening to this, throw it in your stories and tag me at socially.awesome on IG. I read every one. I want to help celebrate you. As always, check the show notes for all the resources mentioned today. If you don't have someone that understands your brain and can help guide you on your path in ADHD entrepreneurship, it's going to be a really hard journey for you, a really hard journey for you. And that's why I made 2025 my year to really serve neurodivergent entrepreneurs and start bringing more awareness to light for this. So I can't wait to see you in next week's episode. Next week, we're actually talking about your year-end money reality check. I know it's going to be a hard one. And if you missed last week's episode 191, go back and listen to that as well. So this week, we talked all about goals, but last week, we talked about reviewing where you currently are to make these goals. And until next time, make it simple, make it social, make it awesome.